Okay, can we do like a clap so I can find this in the... So, 3, 2, 1.
You don't need to do it.
Oh, sorry. Why am I so stupid?
I feel included.
You're sat next to each other, Lau. You're not in Barry anymore. Not in Kensington.
I wish, fucking you. Don't want to be here.
Hello and welcome to the Popcast, your weekly indulgence into the world of pop. Each episode we dissect a new topic and highlight our pop culture moments of the week, celebrating the genius of this genre in all its forms. The stigma around pop needs to change and we're here to tell you why. So whether you stand pop music, want to expand your knowledge, or just want some light relief from the impending doom and existential dread that comes from modern living, we've got you covered. The term guilty pleasure is cancelled. I'm Tom, and with me on one sofa for the first time is Ryan and Lowry. Hello.
Sorry, that was the wrong time to take a drink.
How are we doing? I feel like I probably should have learned what like hello and how are you is in Korean by now, so then I could
too busy doing your puzzle, babe.
I haven't. It's doing a puzzle. To give people an update, I am locked in a hotel room in South Korea. It's day 11. I've literally got that thing in prison.
I was just about to say, have you got scratchings on the wall?
Yeah, I've got the thing and I have to tick things off to make sure that I've done them because I'm sort of losing track of what days it is. But 36 hours and I can roam free. What about you guys? How does it feel being together for the first time rather than Zoom? Do you feel like there's going to be chemistry more?
I mean, there's always been chemistry between me and Lowry. We can't deny it. She's tried a few times to advance on me, but
yeah, it's happened. I was same, mate. Same.
I think I did actually fancy you a bit when I first met you. No, I actually did.
No, that's fine. I mean,
and then I was like, "Oh, is he gay?" And then you're like, oh, "I love the Faye monster." I was like, "Yeah."
Ding, ding, ding.
So what's everyone been up to? Obviously, we've had a bit of a break. Obviously, I'm on the other side of the world, but how is London?
Grand. Pubs are lit.
Pubs are fun. Yeah, I got my temperature checked on Sunday.
Me too. It said I was smoking.
So what are they doing? Do they have to are they getting you to scan in
a QR code?
Yeah, but it's optional, isn't it? It's quite because I wasn't in any rush to kind of go back because while the weather was nice, I kind of thought we'd just drink in the park and we went to Hackney Downs and just chilled. But then the weather turned shit, and a lot of the pubs are doing are really, really kind of following it to the book, and you kind of go in, someone will greet you, you have to put your details down, then they'll take you to the bar. It's quite nice actually. It feels a lot more personal, and I think because they've had such a break and everyone's thankful, the staff are thankful to be open again, the owners and stuff, that it feels very nice and very attentive, and it's a very 10 out of 10 experience, and everyone's so far sticking to it. But I mean, I'm sure there are places where people are taking the piss and it's not going great.
Yeah, I haven't been in a drunken atmosphere yet.
Yeah,
because I went on Sunday and it was very casual, only a few drinks.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually been in a place where it's 9 o'clock, everyone's steaming.
In the morning, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But
spoon's breakfast.
It has been really nice being back out, and life does feel more normal. So it is lovely.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like because I literally haven't interacted with anyone or been in human contact with anyone for 11 days. So I'm a bit I think I'm going to have to ease myself in. I don't think they've got clubs open, but they have got bars, so I will be able to go to a gay bar on Thursday and Friday, which I'm very excited about.
That is going to be so amazing.
It's a bit like when when you go on holiday and then you go somewhere quite... I mean, when I went to Malta for a bit and then came back, or even when we went to Thailand, came back and then came into Liverpool Street, and I was because there was just so many people and it's such a sensory overload, you kind of forget how you get used to it and how you just kind of tune in, and even being at home and being in back in fucking sticks or whatever, and then you come back and you're like, oh my god, why are there so many people and why is the air so thick? And
little things when you come back. So I guess, yeah, we've obviously were kind of going where we sort of like took it, we were sort of doing every week, we were kind of in a sort of a good flow of it, and then I guess just as sort of we were going to kind of do the Chromatica episode and we were going to come out and do that, obviously the events that kind of happened in America with the death of George Floyd, and then with then the Black Lives Matter movement coming on, we kind of felt, I guess, I mean, I don't know how it felt for you guys at the time, but I think for me it definitely felt like for us it was about, I think initially it was kind of just feeling like we wanted to kind of highlight other things, and it kind of felt like, I guess, as kind of like three white people doing a podcast, it was that we kind of wanted to kind of allow, it didn't feel like the right time to bring out a sort of a light-hearted review of Chromatica when with everything that was everything that was going on. And then I think, I can't speak for you guys, but I guess it's just, one, just everything that's been happening globally, but then also I think it's just been taking the time to really kind of listen and educate and learn about the movement and really kind of understand, how we could kind of do better. I mean, I don't know whether you guys wanted to, talk a bit about it from your guys' side in terms of how you felt in terms of why we took the break and what you've kind of been doing in that time, and why it's kind of felt right to kind of come back and do this episode.
A big part of it just like you say, it just kind of didn't feel like the right time to kind of carry on with things. And I think when the whole we were really, I think, tuning into the global conversation and just actively, I think, trying to to educate ourselves, and because you see like certain things come into, I think as a country and as like I don't know, just as like a human race, we're so numb to certain things, and we're so used to getting a news alert of like sounds like so many people being shot dead here, so many like celebrities dying, and it's terrifying how numb you become to all of it. So I think
absolutely,
actually kind of taking the time to for me, we're just tuning in and realizing that this is a huge movement that's going on. You can't, the whole point of this is that we can't carry on the way that we are going, especially with systemic racism and just everything that's going on, and just kind of, I don't know, it just opened my eyes a bit to it, and I became a lot more self-aware, I think, of it, of my own kind of feelings and my own kind of behaviours and how I react to certain things, and I was just becoming kind of a lot more self-aware and trying to educate myself in everything, as a whole, and kind of seeing.
I think exactly your point on what you said about about the particularly in America, I mean their whole gun policy just literally blows my mind. So I think, like you say, you hear about a lot of these shootings and a lot of things that these kind of happen, and I guess you take note of the fact that you're aware that a lot of these might have race fueled, or you've got a lot of issues with black trans women being killed at an alarming rate in the States. And I think before you've kind of got so many other things going on that it's an odd thing to say, but there's other distractions, and you sort of take note of it and acknowledge it, but then it's almost felt like too far away. And I think definitely
it becomes too much part of the norm, like a new video every day on Twitter of of an attack, or of someone whether that is racially motivated, if it's homophobic, like you just kind of almost accept it as it's something that happens, and it affects you kind of learn to
it feels distant, doesn't it? It just feels like it wasn't part of ours. And then I think, like you say, because of this time and everything that's happening, and not a lot of other stuff going on, it's allowed that kind of time of kind of reflection, and almost that time to kind of take a step,
and I think
to actually look at it and put it into context to your own life or what's happening in the UK. And
I think one of the big things for me was then kind of realizing that to be able to look at a video like that and be like, oh my god, that's terrible, seeing certain things, and to be able to just, you know, then I get on with my life is a privilege in itself, because it's a complete privilege. And something that I hadn't, you know, you're not necessarily aware of.
How about you, Lau? How have you found this kind of time? What have you kind of noticed or learned about, you know, over this period?
I think it's just been such an eye-opening time for me, and it was really weird because I was actually reading a book called Queenie before the killing happened, and
that's on my list.
Absolutely amazing book. It's by Candice Williams. It's amazing. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest reader, but in lockdown I've been trying to read a bit more, and it doesn't focus primarily on racial issues. However, it touches on it throughout, and even that in itself was just so eye-opening to me. Even how Brixton has been taken over and gentrified by people. And I was in Brixton the other day, and I just felt so different about it. I saw it completely as a different place. And it was just shocking how she's treated in the book by her management, by, you know, people that are just going on dates with her. She's seen as kind of...
So what's the book about?
Yeah, she goes through a breakup with her boyfriend, and she's been through a lot in her younger years, but you find out later in the book, and it feels like she's going through an extremely painful process of kind of dealing with heartbreak, but also dealing with racial issues within work, within a dating life, and then kind of racial issues with like her parents and being younger as well. Just you reading that and seeing it even from a fictional sense, obviously she's speaking from actual experience, it just really hit me, and I was actually quite upset when I was reading some of it, and just I felt like I'd been really ignorant to a lot of things, not understanding how people felt. Like even looking at Twitter, I would just feel so sad, and just, I'm gonna be honest, sometimes embarrassed that I had not realised how bad it actually was. And, you know, looking at how the system works, how inherently racist it is. And then I'm reading the book and why I'm no longer talking to white people about race, and I'm just utterly disgusted. And how recent it is as well. It's not like from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Like, it's fairly recent. And, you know, even touching on points of Cardiff, you know, the slave trade in Cardiff and things like that. I've never learnt that, and they never taught it in school. And it's like there's almost like a frustration, I feel, of like, I didn't get taught this, I didn't know. But just kind of learning, okay, I need to digest this myself and teach my future family and the family around me. And it's a learning process, but it's definitely been a massive awakening for me.
It's one of those things with English people, it's that patriotism, isn't it? Which just makes me feel a bit nauseous, and that's why it's not taught in schools, because you know, we're seen as like, you know, Great Britain, the ruler, you know, the empire.
Well, we've had this conversation Lau before about you know, like I went to, you know, you went to Vietnam, you know, a couple of years ago, and I went, you know, last year, and you go to that part of the world, even being in Japan, and, you know, I went to Japan and, you know, Cambodia and Vietnam, and you go and visit these places, and there's all this colonial, you know, dominance that happened with the UK, and and you know, when you go to these museums and you go to these places and you see the damage that's been done, you know, by essentially white people coming in and, you know, taking everything and just not being taught it. Like, I felt exactly the same as you, like almost an anger and kind of a, you know, just an arrogance of like our education system is not, you know, that we didn't kind of get taught about it. And I think, you know, the thing that's quite interesting with that book is, you know, that she released that book like two years ago, and I think it's quite an interesting, you know, thing that, you know, I would admit that part of me would almost look at that book or read that title and think, oh, that book isn't for me. Do you know what I mean? There's an element of going, absolutely, you know, this isn't a book. And it really hit me with, like, so I've also been reading this book called Straight Jacket, which is a book
that's
which
one
is
of my
basically like a similar
favourite books.
Yeah,
it's completely
so Straight Jacket
changed
is a So it basically is a book written by the editor of Attitude magazine, which is a gay magazine, and basically kind of talks about his kind of experience. And, you know, I read it after I'd read Why I'm Not Talking to White People About Race, and now I've actually felt, I think before I'd have read that and not necessarily recommended it to like other people to talk to, but I think like these books are so important to kind of get people who aren't necessarily from that minority to actually go and read these books to help understand the struggles, because I think particularly with Why I'm Not Talking to White People About Racism was a lot of the, I think it really showed a lot of those, as well as the history bit, was a lot of the impact of the microaggressions and all these things that happen, sort of all the systemic stuff that happens, over a long period of time, that are just like little things that you maybe don't always see the consequences of. One of the bits that I found really interesting was the bit, linking it to music, was the Lily Allen stuff. I don't know if you saw that bit, but basically which music video was it where she kind of did the spoof? It was like a spoof video. She was trying to basically talk about highlighting Hard Out Here, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
So Hard Out Here, and the video she wanted to kind of highlight the sexualization of women.
Oh yeah.
In music videos, but what she actually ended up doing is that actually she only hired a lot of essentially a lot of the people in the videos were a lot of black and mixed race dancers who were then dancing dancing provocatively, but in theory she was trying to do something good, so it, arguably she was trying to make a comment, but actually not looking at it from a racist point of from a race point of view, and therefore actually causing that video to basically further project an image of black women, which black women arguably more than white women are sexualized. I was reading an article, and that's what they were highlighting. The woman was saying in the article is that even within our own communities by black men, we are overly and hypersexualized. So I think it doesn't necessarily matter what the intention was initially with regards to what she set out to do. That doesn't mean that it isn't still racist, and I think it's how it's taking away that pride and listening to someone when they call that out, and not feeling kind of that sense of like you're having to oh well, I was set out to do this, I'm not racist, but you can inadvertently do it. I've
really liked seeing a lot of people talking about kind of that discussion of normalizing when maybe you are wrong, or when you have done something wrong, or of just accepting someone challenges you and you actually realise internally that you were wrong, or maybe you didn't quite have enough information and you've got that a bit it's a bit incorrect, to be able to go okay, actually to kind of own it and be accountable. I think that's a very interesting thing, because I think that naturally as as egotistical human beings we are very we're very kind of reluctant to own up to that kind of thing, because it's like a weakness, or just for fear of looking stupid. So I've enjoyed seeing that.
And I think one of the things that we looked at was looking at some of the, I think particularly why we felt like wanting to maybe record an episode on this was I think pop music in general. I think there's been we've had a lot of people come out and give posts or give speeches or talk on their Instagrams about their experiences within the music industry. And I think that was going to that point that we were making, looking at Leanne from Little Mix, when she kind of put her post up. I think one of the things that she really shared in her story, she talked about how she's always felt like the one who the fans like the least, or that she's coming to her first, I think she says in the article, like her first dance rehearsal, she got told by the choreographer that you're going to have to work 10 times harder than the others. But she put all this out in an article a year ago. She put a big article in one of the newspapers, in one of the magazine supplements, and really opened up about all this, and kind of no one listened, no one took knowledge of it. And I think that's been something that obviously they're having to process as well now, is it must be tough, because it's like obviously it's great to see that people are now starting to be so reactive to it, but there must be so much self-doubt, because you're looking back and going, well, why weren't you listening to me when I said this, a year ago? What's kind of be the change? I thought hers was really powerful. I don't know what you guys thought of.
I don't know if I found it that surprising or not. I feel like, I think historically kind of pop music and music industry has always, put black artists last, and there's such a history of, even back in the 50s and 60s of black artists writing and releasing songs and then them being stolen by white artists, and then it goes commercially is well known, like Hound Dog, Elvis Presley was Big Mama. Was it Big Mama? I need to double check this. I think it's Big Mama Morton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I always remember. I always think about this in relation to that scene in. There's that scene in Dreamgirls.
Oh my God!
When they do the Cadillac song, and then that's. And I remember at the time. I've that's always kind of really stuck with me. That scene that they. That that they took. Essentially took it at the mainstream radios. And you even look at that with dance music. You look at the origins of dance music. A lot of that was because these people wouldn't get labels and deals. So cities like Detroit and Chicago. This was black people creating music. Creating music that they wanted to make. They had to create their own labels, they had to create their own studios, and then when they started to get big and when their clubs started to get really popular with both white and black people, these cities then put huge sanctions on these clubs and closed them down. And then you look now from a dance music perspective, how many of like the most famous DJs, the most famous superstar DJs in the world right now are black or are people of color. You've got people like Honey Dijon, I guess, who's an amazing black trans woman who's amazing, but I guess she's potentially still a bit underground. And you look at these people like Tiesto or Dead Mouse and all these kind of Calvin Harris. It's completely white.
Constantly
completely
sample
whitewashed
tracks from
black artists
and
Absolutely.
so much of their music. And they're the ones that are not being recognised. It's kind of predominantly white male.
Can I just say as well, it's Big Mama Thornton, not I think I said Morton Thornton. See, I should have known that. The fact that I didn't even fucking know that.
No, but it's into that. I didn't even know that before you said that. Like I didn't know any of that at all. And it's even with like disco. Disco now is had a huge decision. But even I find it wild that there was this whole campaign in the States to cancel, to basically cancel disco. They were burning vinyls at baseball games because of this music, and it predominantly coming from black queer underground music that's come into the surface. And I was reading some really interesting articles about, kind of in relation to kind of the industry, and I hadn't even clicked the kind of things to do with, like when we first started talking on the podcast, we had discussions around kind of like who, what our definitions of pop music were and who we classed as like pop acts and who we didn't, and the sort of people that you would kind of predominantly the people you would almost have like more of a discussion about would be black artists, because you'd feel like would they go into like more of a hip hop category or would they go into this?
Like
but
pop
then
R&B.
you look at
or urban, which is like
it's
now being scrapped. Like labels have gotten rid of the term. Spotify's gotten rid of the term.
I mean, the irony of that is the fact that they created like urban as kind of basically a word to kind of talk about black and minority music. And then do you remember at the Brit Awards when Joss Stone won? Do you remember they used to have? So I don't know if you remember this, but they used to have an urban category at the Brit Awards, and Joss Stone won it. I mean that for me is just the epitome of like an example of a genre that is meant to be sort of like a black genre which is kind of separated for them. I mean, R&B literally was used to be called like race music or something, and then they changed it to R&B. That's where that stems from. But it's people going into those.
But also, I just double checked. Sam Smith won a Mobo as well, didn't he? He won like a load of Mobo awards.
Oh,
which is,
I remember.
I don't know if you'd say that's a similar thing, but that's, music of black origin. The fact that they won that compared, to all the other people.
You wouldn't think twice about calling like Post Malone or Eminem, moving into rap, and then ironically they almost seem to get praised. They almost seem to get praised more for it. It's almost taking an element. I don't know. It's an interesting one with the cultural appropriation thing, and to be honest, I wouldn't know. Like, I know it in relation to other things, but it's whether, would you then class Eminem as being as culturally appropriating because he's then basically taking a genre? But we would be very critical of almost, putting a black artist into pop. Like, really, if I looked at kind of kind of black artists who I would say are just like 100% pop. I mean, she's only had like one single, but I really think like Normani, for example, like her coming out, like you could never challenge like Motivation as being anything other than pop, and I think it's really cool to see her, come up.
But even Normani, there's so much on Twitter about her not having the right support from her record label because, again, it's like a black girl in pop.
Yeah.
And I was reading a massive thread on that the other day. Yeah, her label are just not supporting her as a black woman in pop music. And I was watching a YouTube video on it, and I was just like, oh my god,
she is so like undeniably talented as well.
Left.
She's got she's incredible.
Motivation was just left.
I went back and I watched even her like on like Dancing with the Stars, and she didn't win that. Her dance ability was just so much further ahead than anyone else's, and she was kind of pushed to the I mean, I don't know loads about the group, but I feel like she for how talented she is and how pushed back she's how sort of pushed back in the group she was, and then now she's had that amazing first single, and then it's we just haven't really seen anything.
That's what they were saying on the video, that any other star who would, probably like someone like Ariana Grande or, someone like that, Dua Lipa, if they had a song like Motivation, their label would make sure they would get a song out pretty quickly.
Why would you not? Yeah, it was a
viral. They could keep the ball rolling. However, Normani's just gone. It's just like, oh yeah, just put the song out.
I think, and then again, following on from that, her like second coming will be because she's featured on one of Dua Lipa's songs. It's not out yet, but when she releases her like full complete collection of future nostalgia, she is on a song, but she's featuring like. But
it's interesting that's having to happen. She had to feature with Sam Smith, and then she obviously had to feature with Sam Smith, and then had to kind of do this.
Yeah.
And
exactly,
I think it's a lot to do with the music. You look at the music industry. I mean, I think we've talked before about the sort of how it's very like white male dominated, and I think we've maybe talked about that almost from like from a female perspective, because I guess that's where we felt like we could involve ourselves in that conversation. But doing the research on it, there are so few black executives within the music within these companies, and then if they are, they're put into a urban category. So if you're an executive in the music industry and you're white, you can go and head up an R&B or a hip hop, but a black person within the industry, who's an exec, can stay in that category. But it's much harder for them to be able to move over to then head up, to the senior thing or the pop thing. And the article I was reading, every single person who came forward and was kind of having these conversations, every single person was anonymous. Not a single person would allow their names to be put on record because of how nervous they were about because they know that potentially their jobs are at risk. And I think that's what happens in these kind of industries where it is so competitive, and if you haven't got that's where particularly within music, this what starts needing to happen. The diversity needs to increase, but more importantly it needs to be black people in the room and at senior levels who are then able to kind of make these decisions and bring these artists on and know what's best for them,
and nurture these artists and have an understanding for them that a white executive wouldn't.
And I'm hoping that's what will start to change. I mean, I was listening to it was funny actually, I was listening to like Robin do an interview, and she was talking about how like 10, 15 years ago in the music industry. Now it's a lot more open, but she found when she first started out, it was everyone was so insular about recording studios and who to work with, and it was kind of all about your connections, so it was very difficult to work with people by yourself or do any of this kind of stuff. So you'd like to think that, from hearing from what Robin said, obviously she was talking about how now that she feels like she's got a lot more creativity in terms of being able to kind of produce with who she wants, or given flexibility by record labels to be able to do that. But if we continue to just have white people in the room, we're not going to be able to get that same exposure for black artists. Or you have to look at people like Beyonce then, who have to go out, and then, or Rihanna, they physically kind of almost had to go in and kind of take it over themselves and kind of run it themselves and completely have full control over their which their everything that they do. And I think you see it in both of those artists, really, the points when they kind of, you can see when they kind of stepped away, and you see when they started to get a bit more creative control. I think there were elements of it on Fall with Beyonce, but definitely Beyonce is the album and the visual album. There's a really funny SNL sketch actually where it's basically all of them, like all these people in America basically seeing Lemonade for the first time, and it's like America realizing that Beyonce's black for the first time, and it's like this like comedy sketch of them going through, and it's like everyone going up there like, oh my god, I couldn't believe Beyonce. But it, which is obviously comical, but it really highlights that point of so much control over what needs to be said, or almost whitewashing these artists because they feel like that's what people want. So obviously with like linking with all of these stories, I think we kind of touched on it earlier, is like I think the difference with everything that's happening with the current Black Lives Matter movement is it's not necessarily just around listening to these stories and learning about them and kind of what we would do before, maybe just have that kind of shock factor and then move on. I think the big part of what Black Lives Matter is all about this moving forward now is that we actually make proper changes and actually things kind of start to happen. So I guess maybe from like a music point of view, what do you feel like are going to be the steps, or what are the things that we need to sort of start seeing, or things we need to start challenging within pop now in order to start to see changes?
I think there's a long way to go, but I think definitely more representation within pop music, within labels, within streaming services, everything, more black representatives, and I think just making it, I can't really explain it, but just that black girls can do pop, basically. The simple thing, like look at Brie Wamray, she's one of the most exciting artists that's
absolutely
coming out. And I just giving these girls props, and I just think just being way more aware of the industry, and just bigging up the girls in pop that need it and giving them a voice.
And I think that's what we can do at a grassroots level, isn't it? I think we can really,
and even sorry to interrupt, the songwriters and the producers as well, because that's the whole other category that goes into this, is kind of the black people that are writing these musics, producing these songs, just to give them a spotlight as well, so they just don't fade into the background, that they're so vital to so many people's music.
And I think that's what we need to start doing as fans of pop music, who I think who have always supported black artists and have never kind of felt like that we've that's not what we've wanted. And if this is what a load of execs are saying at the top, is that they feel like that we as pop fans want a certain thing, that's just absolutely not the case. But I think now what our responsibility is as both us as within the podcast, but also as people listening who are fans of pop music, is that we have to start just being more vocal about it, and really propping up artists, you know, black artists, and really shouting about them and making sure that we do get behind them, you know, just as much, if not even more than others, in order to, you know, because if we can start creating the demand at a grassroots level and we start shouting about these artists, then that is only going to start to demonstrate, you know. And then of course then within the industry, then it is just about campaigning. Like you said, we've got to get more people in senior places, so, you know, it is about, you know, producers and and people at an executive level kind of making the decisions.
I guess it's just like talking to your friends as well, just like really small things, and just keep the conversation rolling and going. And it's even just with like even lineups on festivals, or, you know, just these things promoters need to start playing their part as well, and just opening everyone's eyes a bit. I just think for a long time we've just not seen it, and now is the time we need to see the light and make the changes that are necessary,
and shout about it when it's not there.
I think with, you know, we've seen progress, obviously it's still got a long way to go, but with, you know, like women being represented in festivals and people trying to like and in like theatre, like doing a 50-50 casting or 50-50 lineup for a festival, obviously, you know, sometimes that doesn't happen. And there is, as I say, so much progress still to be made, but, you know, but why is it not, you know, incorporating, you know, black people into that, and black artists? Like, we should at least have, you know, 50%, it should be 50-50 minimum. Like, it just seems that the little things like that should be implemented, and I think those things will start to come naturally. But I know the Black Music Coalition formed and did kind of like an open letter to the industry to express the lack of diversity and representation, and I think that's what really pushed the changing of the use of urban in music. But I've just found a report, the UK Music Commission did 2018. It found that ethnic minorities represented 17.8% of roles within the British music industry,
it's just nothing.
which is like obscene. It's nothing. Yeah, it's less than not even a quarter. Which is completely fucked. I think it's being more aware, I think personally, of the artists that you support and that you listen to. I know that we want to make sure that we're more representative when we, you know, mention music and shout out. I mean, there's always, you know, more a bigger conversation to be had, and more inclusion that we can do.
And bringing those kind of discussions up, I think, you know, I feel like, you know, now, yes, you know, we're always learning, and, you know, we might discuss an issue and we might get it a bit wrong, or we might say the wrong thing, but I think it's more about having that confidence to be able to have that discussion. You know, I think, you know, we've talked about, you know, issues within, you know, queer issues within the music industry, you know, talking about sexism. And I think now I definitely feel like that through going away and learning and really taking the time, that I feel like, you know, when we do have further discussions and debates within the podcast, that, you know, that we'll feel more confident, you know, approaching the topic and discussing it, because we need to kind of draw attention to it, not just by having a one-off episode.
But it's how change gets made, isn't it? Because you the more you feel uncomfortable having these conversations, but that conversation normalizes, you know, having these conversations, which in turn will then create change, which does, you know, sometimes can feel like a drop in the ocean, but it does make a difference. And I think actively supporting that and trying to engage in those conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they
and it's just properly listening. You know, if you look back, like just before, you know, lockdown and everything, you know, we had the Brit Awards, and Dave did that incredible performance of Black, you know, live with the piano and the hug of it. And if you haven't watched it, it's actually been quite interesting. I was watching. I love a reaction video, as I've sort of said before, and I love a reaction video. But it's been really interesting in America. Like, listen, over the past week, there's been a huge spike in people doing reaction videos to that performance, but
in America.
And I think it's really interesting, because I just remember at the time, you know, there were huge articles in the Metro, you know, there were huge articles about about what he was saying, and, you know, essentially most of it, that, you know, it's, you know, he was discussing racism and discussing his own experience, and, You know, why do we have to be suddenly so quick to like challenge that because they've used the word, you know, race? Why are we challenging his experience and, you know, what they've experienced? And, you know, I feel like with a lot of grime now, I was listening to someone who was saying this, you know, it's almost like a modern day version of punk rock, you know. But, you know, you'll look at the, you know, gammons who love their kind of who love their kind of like rock and, you know, punk music from that long, which all of it was really political. You know, you look at someone like the Arctic Monkeys. You know, a lot of the Arctic Monkeys like first album, you know, was very kind of political, talking about working class issues.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, so we don't even challenge that, and we almost applaud that, and we give that awards. But then someone like Dave or Stormzy do a political performance, and instantly it's like, you know, we're trying to accuse them of like reverse racism. You know, I think, you know, within the media we've got to, you know, got to stop doing that and just listening. And I really hope that is what comes out of it. And if it doesn't, then, you know, we have to be more, you know, more vocal. You know, if some parts of the media.
It is. It's a people's like I don't know what it is about. It's that knee-jerk reaction people have to being challenged or to being. It's that like, well, no, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why don't you? The fact that you won't even have the conversation like proves that something isn't right. Like that you won't even kind of, and that's been a big thing with families, is them not quite getting it because they're like, well, you know, we're not racist because on a like a face value level of, to them racism is you know, oh, I will, you know, I've got a black friend, I've got this and that, and which is like just completely surface level, and it's kind of getting deeper into that and with the willingness to have that conversation, which I think a lot of people are really willing to do that and be open about it, but you just have to spend that time with them and just kind of
exactly. So yeah, I think definitely, you know, for to sort of to conclude this from our side is, you know, we are very conscious now of within the podcast is that we really want to make sure that we are actively, including these kind of conversations in our debates about the industry as we continue to do the podcast. Continue to kind of highlight black artists, and also from where we can with our socials, really try and highlight. I think what we'll try and do is post some articles or some album recommendations, because if you want to learn about racism, there's some incredible albums, albums like Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, Solange, Seat at the Table. That album that's probably one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's just
Same.
For something that's so relaxing, sit down, relax, listen to the lyrics, because Solange depicts so well the impact of systemic racism and microaggressions towards black women, and what happens as a result of that. There's so many of these albums that are already out there that we just maybe just haven't properly listened to as a result of or not heard it in the way that it was originally meant to, but now we're aware of what's happened. I think it's really important, so we'll make sure that we put some materials up and continue to have this conversation.
Absolutely. And even going into when we do season 2, and wanting to get guests on and interview people and speak to people, we're going to take that approach as well. We want it to be as inclusive and diverse as possible.
Absolutely. So next week we'll be going back to kind of like our sort of original format. So we'll be doing pop culture moments, and then we'll be going back through our series of kind of looking at our sort of like first pop moments. We've got 2, maybe 3 of those to do, and then that'll be the end of our first series, and have a break, and then we'll come back for season 2 if we all still like each other by then.
You'll still be in your hotel room, Tom.
Yeah, oh my god, please, no.
Getting your anal swabs.
I will be like clawing at the walls. It's been quite nice having you guys on the sofa together. I feel a bit like fear missing out. I'll be back soon. Alright guys, I will speak to you next week.
Alright, bye.
Bye.
See ya.
If you like what you're hearing, you can support us by following @the Bopcast on Instagram and Twitter, like us on Facebook, and email us at thebopcast@hotmail.com. Also, please subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Love ya.